Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, The State of Smart Manufacturing: Respond to Market Adversity with Agility, Improve Processes, and Technology Adaptation, presented by Plex Systems and hosted by Metalforming Magazine and the Precision Metal Forming Association. I'm Lou Kren, Senior Editor at Metalforming, and I'm pleased to be today's moderator. Before we get started, just a few notes about today's GoToMeeting session. The meeting is being recorded for archiving, and the recorded event will be posted to our website within the next few days. We'll let you know via email when the recorded webinar is available for viewing online. Also, all participants in this meeting are in listen-only mode. The speaker and other listeners will not be able to hear any audio from your site during the program. However, you do have the ability to communicate with us through the program by submitting your questions and comments using the question box located on the right-hand control panel on your GoToMeeting screen. Simply type your question to an organizer as selected from the drop-down menu. You'll also use that same question panel to ask questions of our speakers at the end of the presentation. Now it's time to begin today's webinar. Plex Systems, a Rockwell Automation company, in collaboration with Hanover Research, recently released its 2022 annual State of Smart Manufacturing report. The study explores how manufacturers use technology to address today's challenges and take advantage of long-term opportunities. The data reveal a clear need for smart manufacturing technology to address current challenges. Our speakers today are Michael Hart, Director of Product Strategy, Manufacturing and Industrial IoT at Plex Systems, and Jeff Karen, Director of Enterprise Technologies at G&W Products. In his role at Plex, Mike Hart designs and builds cloud solutions exclusively for the manufacturing industry. Mike also leads IoT product innovation, helping global manufacturers leverage the latest connected technologies to achieve more efficient, agile, and automated operations. Mike has more than 20 years of experience in the cloud software industry. Jeff Karen joined G&W Products, a custom metal fabricating and stamping business, in 1998, and has served as estimator, engineer, senior project manager, IT manager, and director of enterprise technologies. He has been in manufacturing for more than 30 years, working with various materials. His most recent roles have him overseeing all aspects of technology utilization. So without further ado, please welcome Mike Hart to kick things off.
Thanks, Lou. And on behalf of Jeff and myself and everybody on our side, just wanted to thank everybody for their joining today. And today, as Lou indicated, we're looking to share with you and drill into some of the feedback and key findings we had around the 2022 State of Smart Manufacturing report, and essentially review and deep dive into three of the key findings and challenges we saw come from that report. And the first one is the effective skilled worker shortage. Certainly everybody, I believe, is feeling that and what we saw there from the report. The second is around the challenges we all face with cybersecurity and risk mitigation measures. And then finally, the effects and changes being driven as a result of the supply chain disruptions and challenges we face. So as you'll see on the next slide, just a little bit about the state of smart manufacturing. Go ahead and jump to the next one if you don't mind. A little bit about the State of Smart Manufacturing report. It first launched in 2015 as really a thought leadership publication. It was originally an internal kind of thought leadership into Plex and Plex customers. But today, as Lou indicated, it's an unbiased third party that conducts the survey. And we're really pleased by the results we see out of 2022 and the amount of reach that it hit. It hit 321 global manufacturers across nearly every major industry. And if you don't know, haven't seen a report in the past, it's really focused in three key areas. The first being the current state of smart manufacturing, The second is around the challenges manufacturing are facing. And then the third feedback we capture is expectations for the future of the industry. So on the next slide, you'll see really what we have defined as smart manufacturing and the adoption really of the MESA International definition of what smart manufacturing is. And what we saw from this year's report is really three key findings. The first is smart manufacturing and the adoption rate. We saw it increase over the last several years, and it's really starting to accelerate based on feedback we got this year. And that's all around modularization, the leveraging ML and AI technology, and even some of the environmental ESG type of systems and initiatives out there. The second key finding we pulled from the report is around the business challenges that we spoke about there, and we'll really drill into today around supply chain management, skilled worker challenges, and risk mitigation and cybersecurity. And finally, the third piece, which we'll touch a bit on today, is around the technology and the fact that once overhyped technology is really starting to solve problems today. That technology comes in the form of things like smart devices, even cloud and industrial hardened devices, driving process automation, and ultimately bringing IT and OT together. So if we go to the next slide, we'll get into the first kind of details of the report. And what we found is the vast majority of manufacturers believe smart manufacturing is really key to their success going forward. And I think what's interesting to see is that manufacturers view smart manufacturing as a way forward. And in fact, 80% of the survey respondents, responded this way. And at the same time, challenges continue to mount. Certainly, all the normal challenges we have about running our manufacturing plants and business, COVID ended up, illuminating those, right, amplifying those. And some of the top areas for places to address, right? You start to see. For example, 45% of the survey said increasing efficiency was really brought out by COVID. And we have a few other stats around supply chain agility. Nearly 40% of the respondents drill in opportunities around supply chain, another 40% around the fact that COVID illuminated an opportunity for us for remote work and ultimately standard practices, and then over 40% drive into the need to move to the cloud. But I think what's probably interesting is while these challenges already existed, COVID tended to cause manufacturers to really start to think about it, really start to rank these challenges that they need to solve. And finally, we asked manufacturers how smart manufacturing could help. And the top areas of the future smart manufacturing investments were cloud, automation, quality management, supply chain planning, and then tools like industrial IoT and MES. Now, you can find all this information in the annual State of Smart Manufacturing report. And if you haven't noticed, up in the upper right-hand corner is a link to that report from this particular slide. So if we go to the next slide, it is essential. It certainly is promising. Sitting in the seat I sit, to see that vast majority of manufacturers are starting to realize that smart manufacturing is really key to their success moving forward. And in fact, 80%, as I indicated, the survey responded kind of gave that feedback. But mostly to address this, the challenges that they continue to mount, along with all the standard challenges, those shortages of workers, cybersecurity, supply chain challenges, and the need to drive and improve, right? We're seeing all that opportunity. So what I'd like to do is, Jeff, I'd like to pull you into the conversation here. And I know you have some great things going on around how you're looking at technology today, what you looked at in technology and your adoption. So hoping maybe you can spend a little time about your smart manufacturing journey, your technology, and your adoption journey.
Well, basically, I think we like to look at G&W as being advanced, but not necessarily cutting edge. We have definitely embraced the cloud, but our size of our company can make selection process difficult for new technologies. Since we're a make to order, we don't always know what the next part might look like or what it may entail to manufacture it. But we have lights out lasers, and they've been a benefit. But other things like robots, robot MIG welders, we've had for years, and I think we've underutilized them. So now, we're looking at technologies that can add, new scanning and imaging capabilities to improve those efficiencies on those robots. Since we did implement Plex, we look at the data for points of improvement, and we were able to reduce our PPM from over 10,000 to under 500, and that's on a monthly basis.
That's quite impressive, right? Think about some of the things that once were overhyped. It sounds like you're really starting to drive adoption, and even technology that maybe you had at your disposal prior, kind of leveraging that to greater means. So that's excellent. Yeah, I think if we could jump into the next one, I'm curious really from it. I love webinars and I love getting everybody because you can get a great outreach, but don't get a chance to necessarily give feedback. So I think we got a great poll question in here for the audience, and really curious to better understand kind of from everybody on the line, what has been your company's experience and biggest obstacle to growth in 2022? Again, we've seen some from the survey, so I'd love to see from the audience here. So if you can take a second here to go ahead and click on that biggest obstacle you've seen for your company in 2022. We'll give everybody a few seconds here to go ahead and answer it. Excellent. So not surprisingly, impact of COVID still shows up in there, right? But if I was willing to guess what the numbers would come up at top to bottom, the top two there was supply with the skilled worker shortage challenges, right? And certainly supply chain disruption would have anticipated the group. So thank you for sharing that. Great feedback. We jump to the next slide. Let's review what we saw kind of from top down on the growth obstacles from 2022. And really now that smart manufacturing is becoming mainstream, we're seeing a pretty interesting trend, right? And as you guys start to absorb this slide a little bit, you'll see that everything's kind of down from 2022. Just simply because of the amount of feedback and everything, the challenges associated to it. But, I think one of the interesting trends in particular to how manufacturers view technology is the role to solve existing challenges. So let's, that top one as promised was we're going to drill into in the shortage of skilled workers. So let's go ahead and jump into that first category here. So I think the first key takeaway we saw was the fact that companies are addressing the skilled worker and workforce issue by leveraging innovation, leveraging technology, and ultimately using their ability to use data to make data-driven decisions, right? Not to mention the fact that they're starting to equip employees with the right tools while also supporting that path to learning and development. It's all become quickly, a best practices. And I found manufacturers are focused on leveraging technology to deliver benefits through automation. And when asked about the top investments to address workforce challenges, the overwhelming response focused on technologies to accomplish this. Technologies that streamline processes and automate less attractive job functions. with the goal to really attract additional workers. And that automation really creates opportunity to start to move that workforce into value-added work rather than just repetitive tasks that can be handled by smart technology. So, Jeff, I know G&W has done some great work in this area. Can you tell us about your experience in the last year to what also experience and challenges you had maybe with hiring skilled workers, but what are the different programs that you started to put in place to help your company navigate this?
Well, the workforce shortage was definitely an impact to us, just like the poll results showed. What we started doing was we started implementing employee surveys and taking the feedback from the employees, and then, when possible, making changes to our policies and benefits. We also got in touch with local high schools and technical schools, and we shared videos that they could present in their lunchrooms or in their hallways. And we also invited them to visit our facilities because we think, manufacturing has a bit of a stigma of being a dark and dingy type environment. And we wanted to show them that it's actually bright and clean, and that we have things like touchscreens, tablets, Android scanners, things that are more than the old yellow notepads that used to be carried around, and hopefully get a few of those kids to start looking at heading towards manufacturing as a career.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? The stigmatism that's out there, and as we were talking, it's really interesting to see the approach associated to go grab those students, go grab high school students, and open their eyes to what's possible. And certainly technology has a play in it, but I've been in some of your facilities and they're absolutely beautiful, right? And so opening the eyes of what's possible and what they can go leverage to move forward is, I think, gonna help us start to move in the right direction. Awesome. So if we move to the next slide, another interesting trend that we pulled from the survey is all around ESG, or environmental, social, and governance. Sometimes we use the word sustainability to talk about the blanket term for ESG, but this survey allows us to get an accurate picture of manufacturing and technology and even Industry 4.0. And I love this because it's really from the horse's mouth. Last year we didn't even have a question on sustainability, so the fact that it's starting to hit the radar a little bit more is certainly something that everybody kind of embraces here. The couple numbers off of that, I think there's a 97% number there in the upper right about respondents that they had at least an informal policy around ESG. If we go a little bit deeper into that, there's two reasons I think this is really important for us, and we'll see that here is the first is all about business reasons, right? And the fact that ultimately, if done appropriately, ESG policies and approaches can help really the bottom line, with energy management and the appropriate consumption and use of resources that we have around it. And the second is all around the human reason, right? And then essentially getting an environment that people want to come into, and getting workers and a generation of workers to come and deeply and to focus on these type of sustainability efforts. So I think there's some great aspects of that there, and I think the prevailing wisdom in business in general and in manufacturing is certainly it holds true, is that you had to choose often in the past, people or profit, but I think we're starting to see now that we can certainly have both, and in fact move the needle significantly when focused appropriately. And the next slide actually drills into some of those things of what do we mean by it. What type of investments out there can start to support our ESG efforts, especially if people are asking, and certainly respondents focused heavily on the systems that are out there. Systems like an MES system, a QMS system, and by no surprise, a supply chain planning capability. And by using these, companies are able to start to address some of those top efforts, and they end up driving efficiency across the board for it. So while still being, social good, we're starting to be able to pivot and drive efficiency and adoption that not only supports the bottom line, but ends up supporting a piece of that skilled worker challenge. The second challenge that we were going to dig in today is all around cybersecurity. And if we jump to the next, cybersecurity, some of the interesting pieces came out of that, out of that survey. And certainly at the bottom is a daunting number, right? The cost associated to breaches is up in the $4+ million number. And as you start to see the increase in social engineering attacks with phishing and various other means, none of us are immune to this, right? So very important aspects. So let's look at the next slide on a few of the data that just jumped out at me. And number one was the fact that half of the surveyed respondents are looking to adopt cloud technology. And we'll talk a bit about why that's so important. But maybe the part that was really scary to me was just the amount of work that's still necessary in this space, right? And the fact that 61% of those that were surveyed don't have a mitigation strategy in place to go handle this type of stuff. Now, I know my friend Jeff here at G&W does not fall on that. And so I'm curious, Jeff, you guys are kind of leading the charge a little bit around your cybersecurity and risk mitigation preparation. So I'm curious if you can kind of share some of the things that are involved from G&W and what you're doing to make sure your company's safe and well positioned here.
Well, we've spent the last roughly 6 years really making sure that our cybersecurity is as good as it can be. But the military really drove us to the CMMC because several of our customers are military. But what we started to see was that it was very beneficial for us as well to protect our data and our IP. And so we've created a several layered approach, and most of those layers involve cloud-based technologies. But ultimately, it's the end user that really is the biggest impact. And we can have all the defenses that we want. If the end user is not aware, then they can make a mistake. So we've actually also implemented a cloud-based training solution for cybersecurity that sends out, monthly training. And when possible, we try to make them fun games or something so that they're actually learning and enjoying what they're doing. And at the same point, they get to take that information and apply it in interactions for the company, but also can hopefully take it home and protect themselves as well. And the analytics we use, basically to make sure that their performance is up to snuff, as well as their progress through the training program. And then we're able to keep all of the data and present it as needed. And hopefully we don't have to send anything to the DoD.
Yeah, that's definitely not an experience you want to go tackle, right, or have to do. And it's funny because just last week or the week before, I think, is when the normal cybersecurity type of training aspects from Plex, and we have regular cadence ourselves. So it's great to hear our customers are also leveraging that type of experience. And hopefully, like you said, it does what we need to do to protect ourselves. Now, on the next one, it's, some of the additional things maybe to think about as a group. And ultimately, I think the big takeaway around this topic is the fact that IT roles are really becoming difficult to go fill on a global scale, right? And it kind of overlaps with some of the challenges we have with skilled workers, getting people into the right spot. But ultimately, when you start to use a multi-tenant cloud solution, you start to gain a software, a hardware, and a security support team that's ultimately protecting your business 24/7. People focus directly on that. And there's far more professionals and experts end up monitoring your system in that world and in that environment that you could even do independently, even hire or train and manage. So let's go to the last topic here, last major challenge on the next slide, all around the supply chain disruption. And based on the feedback, you guys are feeling this pain as well. And the next slide kind of talks about some of the chaos, right? And all the complications, and even further, what's happening outside in all these areas with the supply chains end up just complicating the things that we already know are fairly complex within our four walls. And as we see on the next slide, it all comes with a cost, right? A cost to us. Things like the stock, not being able to order enough stock, not having trust in what you have and believe that it's right, and ultimately the possibility that stock inventory could be wrong, and then God forbid we have to go through some type of expedited shipping, right? Where I've heard horror stories of prospects having to helicopter parts and expedite the parts to an OEM, whether it be Ford or GM and things like that. So certainly expensive, but the risk and cost that comes to your reputation may be as even more important, right? So I know, Jeff, no company is immune to this kind of chaos, if you will, in the supply chain. But can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at G&W to combat some of these challenges?
Well, it's definitely been a tough year, I think, for everyone. But what we tried to do is utilize the data that we had at our disposal through Plex, and we looked at the analytics and tried to say, okay, what are the trends for the types of materials that we use most frequently, and try to get ahead of, the we'll call it the delay that ultimately came in most materials. But we involved our customers and suppliers in the discussion, and presented the information to them, trying to get as much information out in front of our customers and suppliers so that they could also benefit from what we had at our disposal. So I think overall we really did minimize the impact for most of our core materials, but obviously there are some things that are just out of your control. And so we saw lead times go from what was normally 3-4 days to as far as 16 weeks, and we just had to do the best we could with what we had.
Yeah, it's a tough environment no matter what, but having accurate and reliable solutions, right, kind of at the heart of solving some of those issues. And in the next slide, we'll dig into a little bit of the data that we pulled from the survey and what we saw, right? And I think the first that probably jumps at me that is certainly an opportunity is the opportunity for improvement. And that's that 70% number at the bottom right-hand corner, right? And there's a solution in place in those respondents, but the solution is still manual. It's still through a spreadsheet, and it doesn't get the leverage technology that's available to them, right? Whether that's AI or even just normal business workflow type of technology that supply chain software can help solve. But at the same token, we're seeing the importance obviously grow in the respondents' feedback at the top there, right? Of going from 30 to 60 to 78%, stating they're using some type of supply chain solution. I think the last piece kind of talks about a little bit in the next slide about, what what's the opportunity, right? When we think about advanced technology and we think about machine learning and AI technology as it's applied to the supply chain industry. And the first is, certainly a base system can give you better and higher forecast accuracy, but even AI can take that to the next level and take that to the next level in how it starts to accurately forecast to the supply chain, right? And how you can start to open up your solutions and the technology to have a bidirectional communication with your suppliers and ultimately get a more accurate plan, right? That improves execution across your supply chain. And then obviously the end goal there to drive and have a successful execution of growth and move the needle a little bit from organizations to where you are today to a more reliable situation. The last and final topic to dig into today is around the future, right? And the future and opportunity for technology. So we drill into the next slide. It's really one key thing there is this on the surface. It's not really always clear on how beneficial a new technology can be. Sometimes business cases will change from one facility to the next, and often even from one part of a facility to the next part of the facility. But today, technology that, as we talked about, was often previously considered overhyped is now starting to solve some incredible challenges that we all face. And I think on the right side here, some of the adoption pieces of it, the thing that I'll leave you with, because everybody's use case on what makes the sense for your individual organization, whether it be an MES or a QMS system or an IoT capability that might look at your asset health and process quality, that may change based on your particular situation. But often what stays consistent is how to adopt that technology, right? Which ends up being, once you select it, the next challenge or barrier that you got to go across. And I think what's important is to start to put together a team within your organization that can evaluate not only the technology, but where to go apply it and what those business cases are. And a team that's experienced in understanding the solution that you need based on real needs on the shop floor and can look at and research those solutions to make sure you're making the right decisions. And ultimately, as you do drive an implementation, I think it's critical to go engage the shop floor, go engage the people out on the plant floor and those that are going to benefit from the solution so that you're not only designing, but you're deploying a solution that can ultimately solve their needs. And that ends up making it far easier to drive adoption and to manage the change and improvements over time, right? Give them a voice and they'll help make sure that solution is the right one. It's not really rocket science there, but it's certainly something to keep everybody mindful as you move to start adopting technology that may be a little bit scary for some of us, depending on where you are in your digital transformation. I think on the last slide we got for you guys today, before we open it up to Q&A, is just feedback back on some of those technologies and certainly, looking at some of this technologies and again, some of those being overhyped things are now extremely vital to success for organizations. As you can see from this, I think it's loud and clear that there's a couple key spots that people are seeing advantages from that last year, the years before, look completely different. And that's first around automation, right? Being able to do more with less, remove the redundancies associated to it, and then start to move those resources into more value-added pieces, right? And ultimately, not only address the skilled worker shortage by the automation of some of those maybe more repetitive tasks, but also being able to raise the bar associated to making it easy to bring them on and and train the next group. The other that I'd pull out of here is industrial IoT. You know, when I look at the survey that was conducted just 2 years ago, IoT was one of those buzzwords that people didn't quite understand and leverage. And I think, you know, IoT is still a very, very broad topic. But what we're seeing in particular to IoT and in particular to some use cases like the asset health and reliability aspects of an APM, or even the process quality health that an IoT solution can bring to the table, significant advantages there, right? And being able to go look for improvements into your process and how you might be able to remove what is probably one of the biggest challenges to operational KPIs that comes in the form of unplanned downtime, right? How do I improve the health of my assets, as well as how do I ensure that the time and the cost that I put into the process is going to yield parts that are of the appropriate quality, right? So if I can monitor that process, I can help ensure the quality of those capabilities at the end. So a couple of things just that there is, you know, automation aspects, certainly smart devices kind of becoming relevant, but look towards industrial IoT and in particular APM capabilities as huge opportunities within your plants to help move the needle, which at one point used to be a very overhyped type of technology. So with that, you know, again, on behalf of Jeff and myself and everybody on this end, I do want to thank everyone again for your time and your time to come and listen and look. I think now is probably time to move it back over to Lou and open it up to some of the Q&A. So if anybody's got opportunity to ask a question for either Jeff or myself.
Okay, thank you, Mike and Jeff. There are a few questions here. Excuse me. First of all, excuse me again. For Jeff, what internal functions did you need support from during your purchase and implementation of Plex?
We utilized a third-party implementer. Sorry. The reason at the time was just based off of some of the growth that was taking place, and there was some concern as to whether or not Plex at the time would be able to give us the focus that, you know, we were looking for. But it turns out that, you know, everything went really well. There weren't any issues. We actually transitioned over a Labor Day weekend after about a 3-month implementation, and we didn't run side by side with the old system. We just turned the old one off and started running with Plex day one, and there were almost no issues whatsoever that first week. So it was beautiful.
Okay. And here's one for Mike or Jeff, chime in too if you'd like. What is your opinion on the security of blockchain solutions?
The security of what? I didn't catch the last part.
Sorry, blockchain solutions.
Yeah, I think the popularity of blockchains are going to continue to rise. I'd be curious, Jeff, on what you've seen in your business around what maybe where you're starting to leverage it. I think blockchains an interesting concept that hasn't quite matured enough into the manufacturing side of things, and that maturity is going to take a little bit of time for adoption. But I think there's huge opportunities for the insurance of the quality of parts, both from within the supply chain, right? So ultimately, at some point, I envision that, you know, the blockchain is going to be ensuring that the quality of the parts you're getting from your suppliers and the supply aspects and the serialization and genealogy that you have today is adhered to based on a blockchain. Jeff, I'm curious. Have you seen any applications of blockchain within your business or within your supply chain yet?
Not really at this point in time. And I think, again, it's back to the approach of, we like to be advanced, but not necessarily cutting edge. I agree that I think there's some maturity that needs to take place. The biggest, aspect from us is, leveraging cloud-based systems and, trying to make sure that the infrastructure that would typically have been invested in-house is being done by, someone else that is what they're specialized at. And so we leverage those systems. But I think blockchain, it's going to be a little while before we're really getting involved in it.
Mm-hmm. And here's another question. Poor data can lead to quality and safety issues. What is being done to ensure the integrity of sensor data and capture bad info in a dirty manufacturing environment? Let me rephrase that. Did you get that, Mike? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the challenges, right, is we all know through ERP, MES implementations on that, bad data in means bad data out, right? And so I think there's a couple things from as we look at the ability to go monitor machines and look at the data that's being emitted through them, of how do we ensure that it's of the right frequency, right? And we're getting the right data points associated to it. And so at Plex and with the capabilities of Rockwell Automation, and quite frankly, Rockwell's diverse and strong partner ecosystem, right? We can go help deploy not only technology, but business people to ensure that we're monitoring the right thing. As we think about how do we make sure that we're not making huge decisions on the fact that a sensor could flake out, for the lack of a better word, is there certainly has to be a mechanism on the front side of these tools that account for that, right? And be able to account for data manipulation. So there's a handful of ways that, we're looking at trying to make sure our customers experience the best, that, whether that be through the ability to deploy the right resources to help customers through that journey, but also giving them the right tools to be able to manage and sift through bad data and make decisions on how to handle those on the front side for workflow capabilities, all before and at the edge before it gets pushed.
Mm-hmm. And
and people are making decisions to it.
Mm-hmm. Obviously the pandemic has had a huge impact on everything society, and especially in manufacturing with social distancing, remote work, remote operations, all these types of things. Do you think that has helped make employees less resistant to technology changes?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I think it probably has changed a little bit. Some of that technology that has been in our daily lives has been pushed forward. And ultimately, I think most companies have workers that now experience a high level of amount of technology in their daily lives, right? And ultimately, what we've seen over the last several years, even pre-COVID, was the need to take some of the capabilities that we might experience in our daily lives and our personal lives and bring those expectations to the plant floor. And that's certainly what we've started to see is the rate of adoption to technology increasing, and certainly the comfort level for companies and workforce to be able to take on that. And I think the last one, and I'm curious, Jeff, of your thoughts, but I think the last emerging trend that we start to see, leveraging the gap between remote workers, the technology we have in our personal lives and that plant floor, is a connected worker theme, where rather than putting something out there that gives upper management the necessary tool to maybe tell somebody how that they're not performing to expectation. We're starting to see those tools be placed out there that start to foster a more bi-directional communication, right? And bring that worker and that feedback that you can get from that worker into the changes that maybe can be enforced at an operational level, whether that be a small thing or whether that be a big thing, right? That connected worker aspect that still gives the organization to have a single pane of glass to communicate expectations and how well they're performing to that expectation, but also the ability to get feedback for that worker to the rest of the organization around how they see opportunities to improve. Jeff, on the topic, what have you seen from the adoption curve of technology and the reluctance for maybe Plan 4 personnel to start to be able to leverage some of it?
I think that, as we were, going through our Plex journey over the last, several years, the employees had a learning curve of their own because obviously their input is critical in order to not only manufacture the parts, but also to capture the information we need in a real-time system. And so over time, they've begun to embrace it more. We have definitely, involved them in decision making on the types of devices that we use. I never, forcefully go out and say, this is what you're going to use going forward. We try to get as much input as possible from them. And if something's not working, then we start looking at alternatives. The nice thing about, our situation, for the unfortunate circumstances it was under, those folks that we did have to send home to work from home, it was almost like they were still in the facility because all of the cloud-based technology that we do use, securities and everything go with them everywhere they go, and access to, the Plex system and to see, if an employee is supposed to be running a certain job at a certain time, and they can go in and see it, and it's real time. They can see when they record the production. And so it literally was like you're inside the facility. The only absence would be, physically talking to someone. But it did make it very easy to, say, hey, this group of people are going to work from home, and they just literally closed their laptops and set them up at home, and it was as secure as if they were in our facility, and they were able to function without any issues. And the folks on the floor, as they get more and more of the technology that they help choose, I think I'm going to see, an improvement in the information that I get back, as well as getting, some equipment connected to the system so that it can automatically get the data picked up without any input from anyone.
And I think too, the technology adoption, I think it helps in terms of bringing in new talent, new people to the industry. It makes it a little more exciting when you're pushing that envelope a bit on technology. I think it is attractive to bringing in new people and taking, working on the skills gap there and the worker shortage.
I agree.
And there is one last question. This is specific to Plex. How many users can have access to Plex? And supposing there are multiple plant locations, could each plant have access?
Well, we have 3 facilities, and we're under one Plex, PCN number. And so all the employees that work for G&W access Plex at least once a day for one reason or another. And not only are they at the 3 facilities, but there are also folks accessing offsite from home or while traveling. And we have 130 employees through the 3 facilities.
Yeah, one of the models, one of the things that our customers really enjoy about Plex is the unlimited user model, which obviously removes all the headaches and issues associated to managing user IDs. But one of the founding principles of the system is that we want to make sure we build the appropriate genealogy to all the activities on the shop floor. And as a part of that is making sure we attribute activities to the right plan for worker, right? And so by giving everybody logins and by having an unlimited user model, we now allow that to take place, right? While also removing all the headache. And then as Jeff indicated, we have the ability to manage visibility and security models to allow access even outside the facility due to the delivery mechanism through the cloud, if you so choose, right? And the fact that if you do have multiple facilities and they are in multiple tenants, to be able to see easily across those tenants, right? And so, I think Jeff's point was spot on around what we saw in the pandemic, pushing workers home. It wasn't uncommon even before COVID to have one planner be able to manage multiple facilities across the globe from the one desk, right? And they can do that easily by dropping in and out of the various tenant environments through the interface.
And well, thank you, Mike and Jeff, for that outstanding and detailed presentation. And to our audience, thanks for attending today's program, and we hope you found it to be a valuable experience. Once again, an archive of the program will soon be available. When it's ready, you'll receive an email from us. Then you'll be able to review what you learned today and share it with others within your organization. You may close your browsers now. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.